Welcome to Resilience Unravelled. Hi everybody and welcome to Resilience Unravelled, a podcast that examines all aspects of personal and organisational resilience. A huge all-encompassing subject that covers the ability to thrive in life by harnessing your cognitive, emotional, physiological and contextual abilities. I share stories from people who have thrived despite remarkable obstacles, as well as highly successful practitioners and experts across a range of topics. And this podcast introduces their amazing stories and expertise, as well as my own reflections, perspectives, strategies and tips, which come from my own synthesis of themes and trends from wider learning. You can go to qedod.com/extras to access offers, tools and resources, including free articles and ebooks. For those of you that would be interested in supporting our work and contributing more proactively, you can find our new Patreon page at patreon.com. Then search for Resilience Space Unravelled. So, let's get started. Enjoy the show. Hi and welcome to Resilience Unravelled. Today I have with me Tim Segaller, who is, I suppose, a sort of colleague of mine in a way, because he works in the field of coaching and mindfulness and all good things and resilience, but he works in a different sector to me. So I thought it'd be absolutely fantastic to talk to Tim and to find out all about him and his organisation. And he's got some really brilliant resources on his website, and I thought we could talk a bit about that. So Tim, hello, how are you?
Hello, Russell. I'm very well, thank you. And yourself?
Groovy, groovy, groovy. Now look, your surname, Segalla. What's that all about then? Where does that come from?
It's an anglicised Romanian name. So my great-great-grandparents came over from Romania in the 1900s to escape the pogrom. They were Jewish. And so I think it was Segaller, and they were trying to anglicise it. And they've come up with this name, which I believe is unique. I think we are the only Segallers in the world with that spelling, at least.
Really? That's brilliant. I mean, that's a real claim to fame, isn't it? I'm going to have that down as a quiz question.
It's my only claim to fame, but never mind.
No comment after our previous conversation. So we were chatting before our show began, and where in the world are you? Tell me where you are.
I'm in East London.
Right. So you're in the hotspot at the moment of world events in terms of lockdown and such like.
Yeah, yes. Although where I am is incredibly quiet. So, well, I suppose that's pretty much the same everywhere. But I'm not experiencing what I should imagine others are experiencing in London.
Yes, and you'll be handy for the new Nightingale Hospital should anything happen.
Very true. I hadn't thought of that.
It is quite astonishing in terms of organisational resilience, this idea of being able to suddenly build a hospital in a leisure centre. I think it's quite interesting to be able to harness and marshal resources from the army and such like, to be able to bring all these systems and processes together. I don't know about you, but I know you work in that sector more than I do, but it's always appeared to me that the public sector is incredibly onerous for bureaucracy and long supply chains and difficulty with getting decisions. And it seems as if suddenly they're making decisions very quickly. That must be quite encouraging from your perspective.
I think so. And let's hope that they learn something from that, and that continues once we're the other side of this extraordinary situation.
Yeah. So Tim, tell me, how would you describe what you do?
So, yeah, well, as you said, we are in similar worlds. I would say that I am a leadership coach and a resilience trainer. Essentially, what I do is help people to access their natural resources to deal effectively with life's challenges, whether that's in the workplace or indeed in life's challenges. So I do that through the modality, if you like, of coaching and through particularly mindfulness-based processes and techniques, which are a big part not only of my professional life but my personal life as well.
Great. And how did you start all this? What was your career before this?
So before coaching and mindfulness training, I largely worked in communications, initially in PR, which I fell into really because I didn't know what else to do after university. And then sort of sideways moved more into writing and communications, for charities. And then really through my own personal struggles and experiences, initially through therapy, that brought me in contact with, more of the world of personal development and mindfulness. And I really threw myself into mindfulness. I was for a period heavily involved with the London Buddhist Centre, and I started, I was the first manager of their secular wellbeing program. So that was like the bridge, if you like, between the two careers, because I suppose I realized once I was putting into practice some of the wisdom that I now try to spread, that it was having such a positive impact on my life that I felt converted to the cause. I'm talking to the cause of well-being, resilience, mindfulness-based processes, that, a bit like the guy who, I always remember the guy from the Remington. He loved the shaver so much that he bought the company. Yeah. And in a way, it's like, I got so much from mindfulness processes that I thought, I want to teach this, I want to spread this.
Yeah.
And coaching felt like the most natural bedfellow, if you like, of mindfulness. So yeah, really, I got there through my own personal experiences.
And that's often the way that a lot of therapists really get into the world, isn't it? You always say if you meet a therapist, you meet someone who's actually had some problems in themselves, actually, and that they're the best advocates for the method they've used. So you often find EMDR specialists who've used that because they've had maybe a PTSD experience or something. So that's interesting.
Exactly.
Can we unpack mindfulness a little bit then for people? Because I've had a lot of American guests on, and there's a sort of almost zealotry or zeal that comes from describing mindfulness as the panacea of all ills and ailments and such like. And people talk about, I've been on a 6-month mindfulness retreat, and at the heart of it, when you look back at some of the thinking, there's a sort of religious background to it, and there's a sort of social dynamic background. People like Eckhart Tolle, and I just wonder where your stance is on this. I mean, can you actually unpack what mindfulness actually is from your perspective?
It's a biggie, but it's a good question. I was thinking about this morning. I was thinking he'll obviously ask me about mindfulness and what it is, my take on it.
Sorry to disappoint you.
So, of course, it has its roots in spiritual and religious traditions, particularly Buddhism, and then has been adopted and adapted in the modern Western world, initially through sort of science and medicine, through Jon Kabat-Zinn, and then, embraced in so many different ways. I would say that it's, I was almost going to say it's whatever you want it to be, but that's not quite true. It depends what your worldview is. So, of course, if you're spiritually inclined, you're going to define mindfulness in one way, and if you're not, you'll define it in another way. But I think what is in common at the heart of all of those is it's a way of understanding and working with your own mind most effectively. Right. So it's really about awareness.
Right. I was going to say you're
understanding.
You're almost describing self-awareness when you say it that way.
Yeah, I would say it's a set of tools rooted either in a spiritual tradition and or then backed up by clinical scientific approaches that helps you see how your mind works, and based on that knowledge to make the wisest choices in your life. And of course, if you're spiritually inclined, then that's going to be about turning towards, enlightenment, awakening, whatever you want to call it. And if in a secular context, about living your life in a way that is gives you the most sense of satisfaction, well-being, and being of service to others. Or indeed, it can indeed be braced in situations where it helps you be more productive and make more money. So it's something that, depending on how you see the world, that's going to determine what you do with it.
Now that's fascinating, because most people describe mindfulness as this thing about being in the now, being here and being present. And it's really, you're the first person I've heard describing mindfulness really as a sort of a shorthand for self-awareness and mental mental self-care almost.
Yeah, again, I was thinking about this morning because I think that sometimes the way that mindfulness is communicated and has been understood in the modern West is too narrow and too limiting.
Right.
So yes, it is about being in the present moment, but that's a means to an end. That's a technique or a process, but we don't do that for its own sake. We do that in order, in my experience, at least, and the way I work with myself and others, in order to broaden our horizons, to feel more rooted in ourselves, and therefore, to make wise choices in our lives. So I have to admit that sometimes when I hear that very narrow description as, mindfulness is just about being in the present moment, it winds me up, because that is missing so much of what the wisdom or the technology, if you like, offers up to us.
Right. And would you say that meditation is a tool that's part of mindfulness, or is it the other way around?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, often one can end up getting sort of twisted in knots around the semantics, although it's useful to get clear as well. So meditation, I would say, is the primary and most reliable tool for cultivating mindful awareness, but it's not the only one. And the way I, again, work with myself and others is, ideally you're using, if you like, the more intense training ground that meditation provides to cultivate skills that then spill over into the rest of your life, so that ideally you can be mindful all the time, whatever you're doing, including when you're engaged in highly energetic activity. You can still be aware. So yes, it's the primary tool. And of course, I suppose the confusion comes because there are also many other forms of meditation. So there's mindful meditation, but coming from all the different traditions that embrace meditation, there are many other ways to meditate, depending on what one means by that term as well.
And I think in our world, I just wonder how much we're overcomplicating and confusing people. Because I'm a coach as a unit psychologist and a hypnotherapist, and I did hypnotherapy for fun in a way, but then it seemed to sort of bring together and encapsulate some of the work that takes place in guided meditations. And then now you're sort of saying that we're now starting to really sort of create a Venn diagram where everything overlaps, but without really being clear about what really things are for. And I wonder if that actually matters, or whether it's just about finding finding the answer.
Sure. I completely agree with all the premises of what you're saying there. And taking various threads from what you've said, I think one thing I've noticed is that there is huge overlap between what mindfulness does or can encompass and many other tools, models, approaches, including hypnotherapy. When I've spoken to other hypnotherapists, I've thought, gosh, some of this sounds an awful lot like mindfulness.
Yeah.
Same with NLP, big overlap.
Yeah.
And in a way, I like to be very pragmatic in life. It's whatever works, whatever processes, learning, routines or habits that help people, as I say, feel more grounded, greater sense of self with a capital S, the good self, that that has some natural confidence and energy and so on, and insight and wisdom. However you get that, then that gets my vote. And I think it can come through all sorts of these modalities, as long as it basically raises your level of awareness and understanding.
Yes. And you mentioned that you found the best way to deploy, maybe I'm slightly misinterpreting what you said, but you linked the delivery of mindfulness knowledge and skills acquisition with coaching. So I was intrigued to. So obviously, I've linked it with coaching and hypnotherapy. You've linked it with coaching. What was your rationale for that? Because a lot of people see coaching as much more of either the whole life coaching-y type thing or the whole performance coaching-y type thing. But that
Yes.
doesn't always clear what coaching is really. And
Yeah, quite.
coaching different than counselling and blah blah blah. And here
Yeah.
we go again. Tell me your take on that, because I think your organisation, sort of Rising Minds, is interesting because I wonder whether you get people who are more, and this might be a complete lack of knowledge on my side, but you get people who are more aware of these processes in your world.
Yes and no to that last point. I'll come back to that. I would say that the reason I put coaching and mindfulness together is, I did the training in each modality at the same time, right. Roughly the same time. And when I was training, it just became very clear to me that they felt like natural bedfellows, because the way I saw it, the skills and techniques and processes that mindfulness teaches, as I've said, about awareness, insight, wisdom, self-management, stress management, all of that, if that's like being cultivated in an individual, that can be harnessed in the coaching and help the coaching work go deeper. Yeah. And inevitably, it's true that because, I feel kind of steeped in mindfulness, it has impacted on the kind of coach I am. And I probably am, a bit different from, not that there is a standard, but you know what I mean. If there was a sort of, or at least there's a standard idea of what a coach is, as you said, which is about sort of, I suppose, much more action oriented, much more, let's sort of
focused.
Exactly. And of course, I include that, and I hope that clients come away from sessions with a sense of, what they're going to do as a result. But I think, the mindfulness aspect probably creates more of a sense of wandering with both spellings in my work and more of a sense of space. Yeah. So I probably do spend longer allowing people just to sort of explore stuff before I come in with the what you're going to do about it type question. Yeah. But I think vice versa, the reason also I put them together is having been on mindfulness courses, initially as a punter, if you like, what I think that sometimes they miss, understandably, is as a group course, it brings up stuff for people, and then if they don't have something in place, sometimes that can be confusing for people. Right. How to process what they're bringing up in their lives, new insights, new understandings, some of which can be challenging. And so then to have a space, a one-to-one coaching space, that can help them process that. So for me, the ideal in a program in any context is where you've got a mix of some group work, including mindfulness, and then one-to-one work where people can process that more confidentially.
Yes. And this is an impossible question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What's mindfulness best for? So when people come to you and say, so I was sort of quite clear, I think, what hypnotherapy is best for. And I suppose I have my own view of what coaching's best for. And these are my own views, but what's your view of what mindfulness is best for?
Well, the slightly flippant...
I don't like to say everything.
Oh, damn it, I was going to say everything. I mean, in a way, I do believe it is, it's not a panacea, but I think it's applicable to any situation where people are trying to gain greater clarity or understanding, or come to terms with something in themselves or in their lives. So that is broad, and it is almost everything. But
let me drill it in a little bit. So you have,
of course,
we have a situation in the world at the moment where everything's sort of unknown.
Yes.
It could have been predictable, was predictable, because people have predicted it. and people find themselves in the middle of a maelstrom. Okay.
mm,
So
mm,
how can people use mindfulness to help them at
mm.
the moment?
Sure. So answering that, and indeed, the previous question about what it's specifically good for and how that plays out now. Well, the scientific research, the clinical research, the stuff over the last 2 decades mainly, particularly since the advent of MRI scanning, has shown that what it particularly affects in the brain is firstly the ability to focus and concentrate.
Yeah.
And I think in our current climate, where of course there is so much uncertainty, which is extremely unsettling, that causes the mind to go into its automatic, highly discursive and distracted patterns that ultimately give rise to stress. And so the ability now to, as it were, ground your awareness more in the present moment, and therefore to focus and concentrate, is going to be hugely important in terms of productivity and resilience in challenging times. Where it's also shown to be really helpful is in the arena of, let's call it, approach rather than avoid. So this is when we're faced with challenging situations like we are now, our kind of automatic unhelpful tendency is to try to run away from it. Totally understandable at the moment, but the science shows us that if we can, in our brains, in our bodies, learn to turn towards them and understand them and process them bit by bit, and we're, as it were, we come back to normal quicker. And I think we're all going to need to come back to normal more quickly. And I'd say the third thing is around the whole stuff around essentially relationships, emotional intelligence, and to put a more spiritual word on it, compassion. And I think that is encouragingly, really encouragingly showing up. One of the delightful things for me to have witnessed in these last couple of weeks since lockdown, yes, there's a lot of panic and anxiety out there, but wow, the compassion that has been activated in people. And I think that's really encouraging. And this mindfulness stuff just can take that deeper. And I think we're going to need that to keep us going on a road that we don't know how long it is.
So that's interesting that you said that. I love that idea of the compassion thing. I think that explains such, many of the things that are going on at the moment. But at the same time as we're increasing compassion, we're almost reinforcing the opposite as well, because you have, at the same time as compassion, you have more violence, and we have more antisocial behavior. We have people coughing on each other, attempting to spread the virus deliberately. You've got people who are the reverse of compassionate. So do you think compassionate's linked to education and wisdom and therefore learned? Or do you think actually people are just sort of acting out? And why would there be a lack of compassion in certain parts of the world?
So, well, actually, it's interesting. I'm influenced by, I read an article about this recently. Yes, it's true that, you get these incidents of violence and lack of compassion and so on. I think the media, again, it's what they do. They're not going to change now. They focus on those in a disproportionate way. And they are, in fact, if you think about it, a tiny, tiny minority of society. In fact, a surprisingly small and encouragingly so proportion of society who are not playing ball, not using this, not being respectful towards others, and because it makes a good story, it gets blown out of proportion. Maybe I'm seeing things from a slightly biased point of view because I want to see these encouraging, compassionate stories. but I, as far as I can be objective, it seems to me that is real. As for what causes those people to behave in the way that they are, that's complicated, isn't it? And I suppose my feeling is that they were behaving like that beforehand, and they're just continuing to behave like that way now, really.
Yeah, my go-to has always been on this, is that people aren't doing what you want is because they don't know how. And I think people aren't being educated, trained, and given a leadership, a role model to be able to perform, work in a specific way or act in a specific way. We've not had a need to be compassionate to each other, have a sense of community for a long time. Whereas if you look at it's bizarrely enough, some of the sort of blue zone areas in the Mediterranean, they do that. And it's been slightly compromised by that because of a lockdown thing, everyone's infecting each other. But I do think we've lost our ability to know how to be compassionate.
Yeah, I think so. And
I'm thinking this is our next online venture, how to be compassionate. I'll be looking at you on Rising Minds soon and seeing this new course.
Yeah, I mean, it's, in a way, I come at this from two different angles. Firstly, this angle I've been saying, that I do genuinely believe that what's happening at the moment is a sign of the fact that the seeds of compassion are there within us, and they have been activated.
Yeah.
And that is there's something extraordinary about this, compared to other crises or challenges. The fact that it's affecting the whole globe, and that we are largely all under the same essential conditions of our lives being restricted in the same ways, is such an equalizer and a leveler, that it has made us, bizarrely, I felt more connected in the last 2 weeks, possibly, than in any time in my life, which I think is extraordinary, because I haven't, other than when I go to the shop or whatever, I haven't actually seen anyone in person, or someone I might pass in the street, but I haven't seen any of my friends in the flesh. But I'm doing so much connecting with people. And to me, that is arisen out of, yes, it's people all collectively feeling slightly afraid, and so looking to do what supports them. But in a way, the flip side of that is, well, what does support them? Being connected, being compassionate to each other. And in a way, I hope that once we're the other side of this, we can stand back and look at it and think, what are the lessons we can draw from that can then indeed be incorporated into, as you say, training, education of all kinds. And I would say this, but I think it's true, mindfulness has got a big part to play in that, because it's just been shown that it literally changes how your brain works, the neural pathways and so on, including those that are responsible for well-being and compassion.
Yeah, and it's interesting because both of us work in resilience from different angles, but I mean, I'm always very drawn to this idea. So some of the child soldiers from Africa who have, who've gone through incredible, stories, and the thing they are taught to experience and to learn to be able to engage with is those seeds of compassion that you're talking about. Because when you're young and you're, being forced to fight, you don't have the brain activity to be able to be compassionate in a way. You're recipients of compassion, not givers of compassion. And it is interesting that I think compassion's at the heart of resilience, and I think it's a lovely way of thinking about it, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, of course, this is where, in a secular context, one uses terms like well-being, and compassion can be used, but the seeds of that are in these spiritual traditions. And I make no, I don't try to hide the fact that I see myself as a Buddhist, but when I'm training people in a secular context, I don't bring that in. But of course, if anyone asks me, I tell them, because you can't conceal that. And in a way, in Buddhism, and as I understand it, really at the heart of all spiritual traditions, is ultimately the wisdom of your true well-being, your true contentment and happiness lies in going beyond your narrow self and to extending yourself out to others. And it is delightful to see that, although it gets, in some ways has to get diluted or translated into different language, that does bleed through into our common secular wisdom. And so many approaches when this stuff is taught, like in schools and in businesses, is bringing out more and more of this element of, basically think about other people, because you'll feel better for it in the long term as well.
And I think I totally agree. And the second thing is that you're a man of action and not just words, because on your website, risingminds.org.uk, which has got some really interesting things, one of the things you've done for other people is you've given a pretty comprehensive video around how to work from home effectively, or how to work effectively from home. And it's a really great video with tons of tools and such like, and you can get that risingminds.org.uk/working-from-home. Hopefully that's a good enough plug there, Tim. And but I think that's really interesting, because I think that sense of giving back is important, isn't it? And giving back, and in a way that you said earlier about being practical, because actually it's about, giving. A lot of people give because what they're attempting to do really is to hook people in and sell at the end. It's the old idea of, what is it, jab, jab, punch, or whatever the idea is, or jab, hook, like, I forget the boxing. But you give twice and then you ask on the third thing. But I think true compassion and being practical in the world goods is to give stuff freely. And so I suppose that comes from a Buddhist place, but it also comes from a social, like the NLP and emotional intelligence things that you're talking about earlier. It has a social facet to it as well, doesn't it? It's worth doing, because actually, in a way, it makes you better as well as everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was, I'll be completely transparent with you. When all this kicked off, our current COVID-19 situation, it was a conversation with a friend, and I was saying, I know a lot about working from home, and of course, my profession is about helping people to adapt to change and challenge. And and I was suddenly thinking I could really help people with this. I being also transparent with you, I was also aware that in offering something out there that hopefully people would access, that they'd become more aware of me and my organisation, which is no bad thing in the long term. But it was interesting because, again, I'll be transparent. At first I was thinking, oh yeah, I'll put this out there and maybe I'll sort of, try to charge a modest fee. And then I suddenly thought, I can't do that. I can't do it. Without being sanctimonious or holier than thou, I'm so glad I didn't. It would have felt all wrong. And it has felt fantastic to offer something that is targeted and focused, that I think is, appropriate for what people need at the moment. And I do, as I said, without polishing my halo or anything, I just feel good for it. And again, I guess I've been really impressed by how much that I've noticed people are offering things. Again, no doubt sometimes seeing it as an opportunity to get people aware of what they're doing, but fair enough, they are still nonetheless offering stuff for free, and they are, I'm sure, still doing it because they just feel moved to do it. Yeah,
brilliant. So if people want to get hold of you, Tim, I'll just allow you to slurp that water down. Or should we begin away? We just drew back the magic of the curtain and saw you. Normally ever see you taking a glass of water, ask you a question at that precise moment.
All right.
I'm referring to our conversation earlier in terms of being gentle. So people want to get hold of you, Tim, and find out more about what you're doing and how you work and such like. How can they do that?
Yep, so as you said, risingminds.org.uk, and there's a contact page there. You can drop us a line or give us a call. All the details there. As we were talking about before we started this, these are interesting times. What I offer at the moment because we're a social enterprise. So we run some stuff for businesses and organizations all around the kind of stuff we've been talking about, adapting to change and challenge, leadership resilience, workplace resilience as well for larger groups of people. But we also run programs in the community, funded programs, people who wouldn't otherwise access this stuff. But, you know, in the next few weeks and months, it'll be interesting to know what I'm going to come up with, because I think we need to adapt and need to adapt fast, not too fast, because then you're not being truly responsive. But yeah, watch this space, go to Rising Minds, and inevitably, I, like many other coaches and trainers, are going to be offering more stuff online, and I'm still working out what that's going to be, whether it's you know, along the lines of the free offering that I've put out there, helping people adapt to working from home, maybe other similar things, other courses and programs, group and one-to-one. Yes, so that's the place to watch what is going to unfold.
Great. Tim, it's been a real joy to talk to you today, and you know, it's been fantastic, and we will look out and see what's been happening. Perhaps maybe one day when you've got some more groovy stuff as well as what you've got online, we can come back and unpick some of those other things, because we've barely scratched the surface, have we?
Indeed so. Indeed so, yes. And thank you very much, Russell. I've really enjoyed it today.
Thank you so much for your time. You take care.
You too.
Hi everybody. I hope you found that episode useful and interesting. Feedback is always welcomed, and if you're in the mood to subscribe to us or even leave a comment on iTunes or Stitcher, that would be amazing. If you want to suggest ideas or even people you would like me to interview, then reach out to us at qedod.com/contact. As I said earlier, you can go to qedod.com/podcasts for show notes or follow the links. And you can go to qedod.com/extras to access offers, tools and resources, including free articles and ebooks. For those of you that would be interested in supporting our work and contributing more proactively, you can find our new Patreon page at patreon.com. Then search for Resilience Unraveled. I look forward to being in your ear next time around. Take care.